I like reviewing movies and like things that are part of a franchise that are outside of my wheelhouse. I feel like that's a great challenge as like a YouTuber to try and think outside of the box on something and just think about, oh, like this is a window into a fandom, right? So I guess that's the intro here for me to say that I watched, oh God, this is gonna be a long title. Justice League Cross Ruby Superheroes and Huntsman Part 1. Oh God, it's a Part 1? Whew, okay, I just gotta start off this little section by saying it has been a very long time since I've watched Ruby. I know it doesn't really seem like I'd be the kind of person that would watch Ruby, but I watched the first season close to when it came out a long time ago. So this has like coming up on, honestly, it might be a decade at this point. I was maybe like 13 or something when I watched it, and I thought it was cool, but I never really picked up on any of the other seasons. And of course, this latest volume, I guess, how they call it, has been going viral because apparently, well, to my knowledge, they accidentally made one of the main characters homophobic, and I don't know how you do that. So going into this, this was announced like last summer as a two-part movie. I don't know why it's put in two parts, because I honestly think this could be just a movie on its own and not a part one and part two. It's pretty obviously going to get a sequel since there is a part two. But this is just such a weird idea. Yeah, I know this existed as fan fiction, and I believe there was something official put out, like a comic or something. That is something that I'm not entirely sure on because I didn't get to look at that before recording. But apparently they just decided to make this into a movie. Apparently the studio behind Ruby, Rooster Teeth. This is the first thing they're animating outside of the show because there are spin-offs to this show that are not animated by Rooster Teeth. This is the first sort of spin-off and non-canon Ruby entry that they are animating, along with teaming up with Warner Brothers themselves. This is a full-on entry into the along with like a Ruby spin-off, but it's also an entry in the DCAU animated movies, like the newest batch of ones that are coming out right now. And this movie came out not even a week after the last volume of the original show ended, where even with it being accidentally homophobic, it being one of the better volumes they've put out recently. So I guess I was a little bit curious about this. I don't know. I don't know if I should call it morbid curiosity because I wasn't going into this with like a negative mind space. I had an open mind with this, just trying to see like what I can go into this because apparently a DC writer wrote this. So we gotta go into this and just think, okay, gotta know what I'm getting into. There are some things I'm not gonna get because I have not watched Ruby in a very long time. And I will say, this is much more of a Ruby movie than a Justice League movie. So basically, the plot of this is the characters of Ruby, like they're there in Remnant, and somehow the Justice League, they get pulled into it somehow and they become teenagers because it's that show is at a school and they're all teenagers. And it kind of reminded me of that one episode of Justice League Unlimited where that happens and just the story and the writing, at least for the most part, actually isn't that bad. I can say that I had a decent amount of fun with some of the elements in this and just knowing that like this is a franchise that I'm probably not going to get into anymore. I feel like that's an achievement of itself that it feels like it explains something like, oh, okay, I can get into like what dust is and all these other elements of Ruby that translated well to me, a non-fan. Also, I really appreciate the villain that's like a deep cut DC character. But I will say, if you've seen the CW Flash series, you probably know who this character is. Also, I do know that Ruby in recent years has had some animation issues, like the quality of the animation has gone up and down throughout volumes, and I will say it feels a little off in this. I get the idea of blending the 2D art with the 3D character animations, and it's a pretty cool idea, but I just don't think they blended well in this instance. I don't know if that has to do with the show as well. It just looked a little janky to me. It felt like old PlayStation 2 characters every now and then. The voice acting though is pretty alright. Pretty much everyone from the Ruby cast, I would assume, is doing a pretty good job, because again, I don't really know that kind of stuff. But the in particular, I actually really liked Superman in this, voiced by Chandler Riggs, who played Carl in The Walking Dead. I actually really liked his take on teenage Superman, Superboy. I don't really know how that works in this instance, but I did like Superman, and I also liked Wonder Woman, and I actually completely forgot to pull up who voiced her in this. But the majority is all right, like outside of them. Whew, okay, we gotta talk about the really bad. Like this is by far the worst thing to me. Because I mentioned earlier, this is written by a DC writer, and I just have to say, how do they fuck up Batman this much? In this, Batman is voiced by Nat Wolff from the Naked Brothers band, and he's not that good of a voice actor, and it just did not feel like Batman at all, especially not only in the voice acting but also in the writing. The Batman character that is in this is so mischaracterized that it's actually very laughable. It's honestly shocking that somebody from DC wrote this. And if they're writing part two, uh, just have somebody else write Batman. It is. I'm not gonna spoil everything, but it's to the point where I could call it character assassination, where just it is there is a specific moment in this that honestly I think has gone viral, and that clip is going around, and that is just so not Batman. It's shocking. I will say though, since like Batman actually has powers in this movie for some reason, because they have semblance. That's what they call the powers in the Ruby world, Remnant, and he just gets like the Arkham sense. Like when you play the Arkham games, you can press that one button and there's that detective mode. He basically gets detective mode as his power, and it's a very funny element to that. Just thinking, oh, it looks like an Arkham game, and plus he has bat wings and he's flying around, which is just that's less cool. But if you were gonna do anything with Batman like that, sure. I don't have this part in my notes, but I forgot to mention that there's a Green Lantern also in this, and it's actually Jessica Cruz. That's the Green Lantern iteration, and I'm only pointing this out because I can't believe I'm saying this. This is one of the best adaptations of that character to an animated film, because I am not a giant fan of the more sarcastic takes they have in some of the animated iterations they have of her. And they deal with, in this at least, they deal with the anxiety of like being a Green Lantern and having all that power and maybe not wanting it. And I actually think that's the best bit of writing in this whole thing. And yeah, color me shocked. I gotta admit, I can't believe I had this much to say about a Ruby movie. Yeah, no, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. It is definitely a mixed bag. Maybe that's because I am not like ingrained into the Ruby fandom, but there are just so many things that are just off in this, at least to me, that just don't sit well with me. I do think the action is pretty cool. I don't think I said that, but I think a lot of the battles are pretty fun, and that if that's where they shine in the show, it certainly shows here as well. But this is definitely such a mixed bag, and the use of Batman in this really. weighs down this movie. And on top of that, why is it a two-part movie? The second one could have just been a sequel. I don't understand why this is a part one and part two thing. Maybe it's to drum up hype for part two, to get me feeling like, oh, if I reviewed part one, I gotta review part two. And I gotta admit, I'm feeling that, so I'm probably gonna talk about part two as well. Yeah, I'm gonna give Justice League, Cross, Ruby, Superheroes, and Huntsman. Got it without looking. Got it without looking. Yes, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I feel like if you're in the Ruby fandom, you're really gonna like this more than I did. But me being more of a DC fan, there are just too many issues here that are just unfathomable to myself that just can't believe made it past the writing stage. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that crossover. If my question for you is, should I review part two? I feel like if this video ends up popping off, there's gonna be a bit of a demand to review part two. And at this point, I watched part one. This wasn't even that long of a movie either, like most of the DC animated movies. So I might as well talk about it. So let me know if you do want that when the movie comes out. I think it's just gonna come out next year, honestly. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.